Welcome. This session is on Advisory Committee Agenda. My name is Michael Voss, and I'm the Dean of Career and Technical Education here at Mesa Community College. So a lot of times I have program directors coming to me asking what should be on my agenda for my advisory. And so here's a list. It's not exhaustive by any means, but there's a lot of items that you could potentially have on there, and there's some that really ought to be on every single annual advisory. So we'll go through these in more detail, but you can kind of see the list here. And then there's some periodic items that should either circle on to your annual agenda or onto a working subcommittee. And we'll discuss those as well. So the first one's obvious. You need to welcome and introductions, tell people to get some food. Food really helps. If you feed them, they will come. And so try to get through that fairly quickly, but everyone gets an opportunity to talk and say their name and where they're from and maybe their interest in serving on the advisory. From the past meeting, it's important to review and approve the minutes. Now, hopefully you took the minutes and sent them out pretty quickly after the last meeting, so they've had them for a long time to take a look at, but we do need to formally review them, make any necessary edits, and make a motion to approve those minutes. Then I'd say maybe the next thing is to close the loop on any previous recommendations made by the committee. So we should have received some recommendations, and we had a decision as to whether we could make an action plan to try to make that recommendation a reality, or say we couldn't do it and here's why. So review that work, any progress that's been done on the former set of recommendations, and kind of do that little report out. And also a good time early on in the meeting to recap program success since the previous advisory meeting. So sharing that out is important, not only in the advisory, but these should be like little milestones that you send out through a distribution list to your advisory all throughout the year. So if you have a perfect first-time pass rate, or you move the needle on course level success, or withdrawal rate has gone down, find opportunities to celebrate success and share that out, because you just never know where else they're going to share those successes and bring more opportunity to your program. It's important every advisory to review the program vision statement. And again, the vision statement is your inspiration, your framework for your strategic planning. It really defines where do we want this program to go. It should be aligned with MCC's vision of leading the way to success in our local and global economy. Also important to review the mission statement every meeting, or at least annually. Again, this is what we do and how we do it and why we do it. So why does this program exist? What purpose does it serve? And again, the mission statement should be aligned with our mission to excel in teaching and learning, and really with the goal of empowering individuals to succeed in our local and global community. Now, it's important to really be clear about the goals. And so if you have a program that's accredited, this sort of statement will look familiar to you, but it's applicable to all the programs that we have. So it's important to have a primary goal of the program and some learning domains, so cognitive, affective, psychomotor. We need to be consistent with that and demonstrate that this is meeting the needs and expectations of the community of interest served by the educational program. So an example might be the goal of X program is to prepare competent entry-level worker bees in the academic or the knowledge, employability, behavior, and or the technical job-specific skills, psychomotor, in these learning domains. So it's important that we craft that, and that the program understands our primary purpose is to do this. There might be other things that we do, but our primary goal is to do that. And for all of our career technical programs, it is about producing graduates who are job ready. There may be some additional program-specific goals, and that's fine. We can develop those. Sometimes I'll see programs have maybe 3 to 5 sort of sub-goals that they do that are really substantiated by the local industry partners, the employers, and the needs of the students. And it just needs to be compatible with the overarching institution goals. Right now, we have a couple of them. We have an enrollment growth initiative. We have signature career pathways. We have an emphasis on teaching and learning. So it would be fine to make some additional goals there. But whatever those are, they provide the framework for that annual program planning and implementation and evaluation. So, resources. It's also important to look at resources with some degree of frequency. So annually, we want to look at the program resources, and we'll kind of talk, that's staffing allocation, it's the facilities, it's the equipment, it's the learning resources for students. And typically it's good to craft this as a survey. I have some examples I'm happy to share. But again, if you work for, or if you have an accredited program, those accreditors will typically require some sort of annual assessment of resources. So if you have a survey instrument, that's super handy. And then, if any of that feedback comes back, less than satisfactory, well, it's important for us to develop action plans to improve the resource deficiencies. Okay, and so here's an example of those program resources. So again, anywhere from the faculty staffing to the clerical support, the curriculum, the budget. So obviously we'd have to provide some information about what our resources are so they can make a decision about whether or not that's sufficient. So I find a good way to do this is sort of a pre-meeting email that kind of gives a state of the program that addresses these areas, and then a survey that they can respond to pre-meeting to see what the feedback is about whether or not these resources that are allocated are sufficient. Now, program assessment outcomes. So really important to share the overall outcome data with the advisory group. A lot of those institutional metrics that we look at for programmatic success. So course level success, withdrawal data, student satisfaction survey data, graduation data, industry certification data, what's the conversion rate on that, job placement and or academic transfer data. And we want to, not just look at 1 year of this, but we want to probably get to 3 years or more of data so we can really look at the performance level, establish 3 data points so we can have a trend to see, are we improving in these areas? Are we staying flat? Are we going down? Do we need an action plan? And then if possible, provide some comparisons to either other Maricopa programs, state data, national data, when possible. So when you have the data, it's all about sort of integrating that data in a thoughtful way back to the processes to see if there's an opportunity to improve. And when we're talking about teaching and learning programs, the obvious things for me is sort of like this holy trifecta. Do we need to make a curricular change to improve the outcomes? Do we need to make an assessment change? Or is it an instructional change? I mean, that's that sort of pyramid that sort of determines the student experience for the most part. All right, Carl Perkins and or other grant activities. So if you receive Carl Perkins funding, it's very important that you discuss that with your advisory group. Now, Carl Perkins funding is annual. It becomes available basically on October 1st. It's got to be spent down and cleared off the books by September 30th. It's like a use it or lose it sort of situation. And we want to make, those investments are going into the program real time. And so there's going to be a report out of whether or not that money was well utilized, what was the student impact of it or the programmatic impact. And then we want to not only share the report of how we use the money, and what was the impact, but also what are some of our plans to make upcoming Perkins requests, and are those plans supported by the advisory? There might be other grants that programs have. They might have Prop 301 or TAC grants. This is also a good area to include that on your agenda. We have a department planning process here at Mesa Community College. It would be really good to share those 3 to 5 initiatives the program is actively working on, any progress that they've made up to the date of the advisory, and the 3 to 5 initiatives that they're thinking about working on in subsequent years, and just get some advisory feedback on that. Now, this is probably the most important part of the meeting, is finding time to get through all that informational piece. So as much as you can front load of that, either via email or offline communication, the better. So that can be just boom, 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 boom down the agenda, because the reason why advisory members like to come back, and the reason why they might rave about their experience, is the opportunity to actually talk with our students. So build in time in the agenda, and in my experience, I started with about 45 minutes in my first advisory doing this. It grew to probably about 1 hour and 15 minutes, because the employers really enjoyed that time to sit down with the students and understand their experience. It was nice what I had to say, but it was far more impactful for them to talk directly to the students. So when you try to get a student group, you want to choose from those that are experienced in the program. I try to unfilter it. I just say, for me, if they're this far in the program, you're all welcome to attend this listening session, because that's basically how it would go down if you had an accreditor site visit, either from the HLC or from programmatic accreditation. We shouldn't be trying to cherry pick those students who are going to give us the most favorable feedback. We really want to have that, to be unvarnished. And so for that session, you want to work with your chair so that they know that those advisory members are going to be on their own with the students for that period of time, and they're free to solicit any feedback of their choosing. Now, the first few times, that may take a little getting used to, because a lot of these advisory members are just used to showing up and eating food and being in sort of a passive mode, but we want them to be in a more active role, and a lot of them will really appreciate it. I have a list of potential questions that you could leave in their folder, if they're not sure what to ask. And so I've got a list of questions provided to me by accreditation site visitors that they actually use in a lot of these listening and feedback sessions. So I can make that available as a resource for people who might want to take the list and modify it for their particular discipline. So finally, the last part of the meeting is about advice and recommendations. And you probably won't get it immediately there after the listening session. You convene for a little bit, sort of close out the meeting. But most of the time, that advisory chair is going to want some time to collect their notes, provide some written feedback to the program to identify what they saw or heard as strengths and weaknesses and recommendations. And really the goal is to create 3 to 5 opportunities every year for the program to consider. We might do something with them with an action plan. We might not be able to do anything, but we will commit to closing the loop on each and every one of those. So a lot of chairs, want maybe sometimes a week or so after the meeting to collect their thoughts on that and send it in, and that's just fine. Now, program leadership, like I said, we commit to making those action plans in response to the advice. Some other periodic items that could be on the agenda, or maybe more apt for subcommittee work, are listed here. Reviewing student competencies, if there's a student handbook, if there's a program application process, reviewing overall the curriculum and the course sequencing, getting in the weeds about program equipment. Does this brand and model align with what you're using out in industry? Taking a look at our university transfer articulation agreements, and conversely, the National Career Cluster framework that we use to articulate high school programs of study into the community college. All those are great opportunities that advisory committee is a resource for you. You don't feel like doesn't have to be a burden. You can actually harness them to do some work for your programs. It's pretty cool. So closing thoughts, think about your program. Do you have a well-defined vision, mission, and goals? Does your advisory group know what they are? Do they review those goals and vision and mission annually and approve them? And is that approval captured in the minutes? Because if we have accreditation site visits, that's something they look for, certainly programmatically and occasionally with the HLC. Thank you for your time today. If you have any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Have a great day.